Okay. Selamat petang. A very good afternoon to all. We'll start soon, and I'm going to close the QR code, QR attendance code, and we will proceed with our lecture this afternoon. Okay. Bagi yang belum mengambil apa nama dia, attendance, you can send your name later on menggunakan WhatsApp ataupun chat, ya. Thank you. All right, so let's get into this one. Okay. Yeah. Let me share you my slides. Oke, jadi tajuk kuliah untuk hari ini adalah berkenaan dengan tren populasi secara keseluruhan di dunia, ya, global population trends. Itu kita akan lihat, dan it may take 3 hours depending on how fast we can go. Oke, sebelum saya mulakan, is there anything that you want me to know ataupun dimaklumkan? Sorry. Can you see the slide?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Global population trends. Yeah? So what I'm going to do here today is to explain a bit of the history of population growth globally, and then on the demographic transition. Then I'll touch a bit briefly on the concept of doubling time. And then we'll go into looking at some of the reasons for the geographic distribution of the world population, and describe the population size and growth in different parts of the world or different nations. Itu yang kita akan buat lah hari ini. Okay. All right. So let's look at the history of population, of world population briefly. Okay. Jadi mengikut anggaran, estimation, ya, human beings have been around for at least 200,000 years. Itu anggaran saja, ya. Nobody really knows how, when was the first human on the earth. Cuma kalau adalah in the Bible and so on, they probably mention something about the dates and all that, birth of Adam and Eve and so on, yeah. But never mind, we don't go through that. So what did they do? Apa yang mereka buat in the early days? Yeah. They were hunters and gatherers. Maksudnya, they don't do crop cultivation, they don't do animal husbandry, nothing of that nature. So everything depends on what is available in the land where they live. Okay, gathering whatever they can from the forest. Okay, including animals and plants, yeah, for survival. Okay, so some of the characteristics of the hunter-gathering society is, of course, number one, the fertility rate is very high, and so is also the mortality rate. Jadi dua-duanya agak tinggi. So the end result is going to be low growth rate, yeah, low population growth rate. Yeah. Walaupun fertility tinggi, tetapi kadar kematian bayi juga, particularly agak sangat-sangat tinggi. So contohnya apa nama, husband and wife, we assume they are husband and wife in the beginning, have a lot of children, maybe 10 children born to them, tetapi dari segi survivalnya mungkin 2-3 orang saja, ya. So that explain the low growth rate in the beginning. And also during that time there were a lot of resources. One of the reasons being that there are not many people. So there are plenty of resources available to them. Yeah, so they don't need to compete that much. So whatever is available naturally are enough to cater for the needs. Yeah? And also there is a lower carrying capacity as well. Carrying capacity ini merujuk kepada how many people, if you will, can a particular area take care of, ya, or more or less berapa ramai orang yang boleh bergantung kepada apa nama ni, sumber-sumber yang ada pada sesuatu tempat. Now, because they are not growing anything, because they're not rearing any animals and so on, so the net result is those resources will be gathered, will be harvested, and so on. And so in terms of the carrying capacity, agak rendah. In other words, for 1 acre of land, the carrying capacity could be just a few persons, yeah, for them to be able to survive on whatever is available in the land. Now remember, nobody plants anything, yeah? There's no agriculture, no cultivation, or whatever to do stuff. Okay. And many also argue that the agriculture revolution, which came later, the agriculture revolution occurred because of the growth of hunting gathering populations, pushing the limit of their carrying capacity. So semakin ramai manusia, semakin kurang, yeah, carrying capacity. Yeah, so less and less of the area of land to be able to support the number of people who are increasing. Okay, so that is one of the reason why agriculture revolution started. In other words, people, human beings started to cultivate certain plants, yeah, contohnya wheat, corn, rice, and so on and so forth, to grow them so that they don't have to depend on hunting and gathering, right? As that was deemed to be low in terms of getting lower in terms of the carrying capacity. So over tens of thousands of years, humans have moved to remote corners of the earth. In other words, every place on the earth, in Asia, Africa, Europe, America, and so on. Yeah, what they do is, of course, they are looking for living, yeah, for sustenance, a place to survive on. Right? And so they use the environment intensively, leading to the agricultural way of life that has characterized society in the past 10,000 years. So more or less, agriculture started about 10,000 years ago. Right? As a result of population putting pressure on the resources, yeah, available to them during that time, in with regard to the um, locations or area where they live. And okay, so in terms of the number of people, as we have seen early on, that the growth rate is very slow. It was estimated, again, this is estimation. Nobody really knows how many people, but this is based on some estimation by demographers. Mengatakan bahwa between 8,000 to 5,000 BC, about 370 people were added to the world's population each year. Itu sangat sikit. Now, if you consider the number of countries we have now, I think we have, what, 160 plus countries? So that means that if you go on average per country, ya, kalau kita assume that each country is the same size for each country, maka ini bermakna hanya 2 orang, lebih kurang lah, 2 orang manusia yang bertambah tiap tahun kepada satu kawasan ataupun satu region or one country, right? So additional people. That's how little it is, right? So, and by 5,000 BC, yeah, as major civilizations were established, particularly in China and Greece, yeah, the world was adding about 139,000 people each year. So that's a drastic increase in terms of additional people every year. But that's, of course, that's nothing compared to the number of additional people each year now, currently, yeah, in the world. We have millions of people added to the world population each year anyway. But that was then, ya, masa dulu sikit tetapi gradually increase. And by 1 AD, there was estimated to be around 200 million people on the planet. 200 juta manusia yang berada di dunia ni, on the earth. And also increased by over 300,000 per year. So rapid increase. That itu secara more or less lah. And by the 3rd and also through the 5th centuries AD, increases mortality also led to declining population. Jadi apa yang berlaku ada throughout history juga, ada benda-benda yang berlaku, ya. Sudden surge in mortality rate. Mortality, by the way, refers to the death, ya, kematian. So increases mortality during that time led to the declining population in the Mediterranean area, as the Roman Empire collapsed, and also in China as the Han Empire collapsed as well. So, yang belajar sejarah itu tahulah what happened, yeah. And population growth recovered until there's another event, which is the plague. Plague itu adalah penyakit yang berjangkit seperti sekarang inilah, more or less, but it's of different type. Yeah? So until the plague arrived in Europe in the middle of 14th century. Jadi dia macam lebih kurang macam COVID-19 sekarang ini. Cuma ketika itu, unfortunately, the world was not as developed as it is now. And so there was no medicine, there's no vaccination, nothing, yeah. So a lot of people died once they are infected, almost no cure, ya. Jadi kematian itu sangat tinggi ketika itu. we're lucky nowadays we have vaccination that we can control, yeah, the spread of the COVID-19, for example. All right, so this is just to show you what happened in the 14th century. Unfortunately, the plague started in China, right? The plague started in China. That's the origin of the Black Death, they call it, or the plague tadi. Ada dengan dua cara. Dengan dua cara. Satunya adalah melalui shipping ataupun sea trade routes. Ya. So China has been trading with other nations throughout the world very, very early. Yeah. And so it goes through the sea, passing through certain parts of the world, dan singgah di situ. Certain ports, and not every place they stop. I think they probably did not stop in West Malaysia atau Malaya ketika itu. Right? So the only target dia adalah big ports. Yeah. So wherever they stop, that's where they also spread the disease as well. Yeah. Virus study. Yeah. And the other route is through land, what is known as the Silk Road, yeah, from some part of China and then to the Middle East and so on, yeah. So that's the route from up here, and that's also where the disease itu spread, right? So these are the areas. The area in green ini merupakan kawasan-kawasan ataupun areas of plague tadi, ya. Areas of plague ataupun where the virus outbreak berlaku. Yeah. So the actual deaths of the outbreak was estimated to be around 1346. Yeah? Right. So that is the history of the death. Yeah. Black Death they call it in the 14th century. Yang menyebabkan banyak kematian, very drastic, yeah. And also in Europe, this is spreading in Europe very fast among these countries, because these countries they have ships and so on, trading between countries and so on. So that's how it spread so fast throughout in Europe. Okay, so. Right. So it started somewhere in China and then spread to the rest of the world. So in the middle of the 18th century, of course, you know, something happened around 18th century, which is the Industrial Revolution. Right? So during the Industrial Revolution, the population of the world was approaching 1 billion. And in terms of the increase in the population per year, it was around 2.6 million additional people every year to the world. So compared to, remember, in the beginning was just about 270 lebih orang saja, yeah. So since the beginning, the Industrial Revolution was approximately about 250 years ago or 260 years ago, the size of the world's population has increased dramatically. Yeah? So there is a sudden surge in the population growth. So which can be shown something like this, yeah, the growth of population through history. Okay, and this is in BC. Okay, and this is around the period where we are now. Yeah, a sudden increase in the world population. Yeah, so a very sharp increase. Dulunya sangat kecil, right? A lot of people born, but at the same time, a lot of people died out. So technology wasn't available. Food production wasn't there's no guarantee, because everything very much depends on the what is available naturally on the piece of land where people live. Yeah. Okay. That's brief history. Yeah. But it's quite interesting if you look back at what happened in the past anyway. So what is now the current world population is I mean not I mean we're looking at the recent lah, bukan current. We look at the current population is of course we have about 7.9 billion as of March 2022. But in 1999, the world recorded a population of 6 billion people. Yeah, that was the 6 billion mark. And the 7 billion was achieved in about what 11, 12 years. Yeah, about 12 years later, 2011. In other words, additional 1 billion people, yeah, to the world become 7 billion. And currently, when I checked yesterday, the population was about 7.93 billion or 7.9 billion lah, as of March 2022, according to the United Nations estimate, or based on the, if we look back at the worldometer that we have seen last week, yeah, you can click on that and you can actually see the rate of growth in the world. Okay. So if I click on this, okay, this is the one, yeah, data on world population growth. Okay. So started 180, for example, with about 200 million people. By the year 1000 to 7.5 million, and then growing. So the first billion was achieved in 1804, actually, yeah, 1804. It coincides with the more or less the industrial revolution in Europe. And then the second billion was achieved in 1927. Okay, so when we talk about doubling time, nanti, you can see how many years it took, yeah, to achieve the second billion, to double the population from 1 billion to 2 billion. And the third billion was achieved in 1960, and 1975, the 4 billion people on the earth. And then 1987, just another 12 years later, we have another 1 billion people. And almost about 12 years later also, additional 1 billion to become 6 billion. Okay, so at the moment we have about 7.9 billion or close to 8 billion, not quite there yet, but close to it. And it is estimated by the year 2044, itu bergantung kepada apa nama itu population growth rate in the world lah. Setakat ini population growth rate itu sudah menurun, ya, it has gone down, so it has it has been slowing down, yeah, and so that's the trend in terms of the population growth in the world. Okay, so how fast are we growing? This table shows you how many people are born, number of people died, and the rate of natural increase. Yeah. So more or less, this is just to illustrate how the world population has grown. So let's say in a year we have about 133 million people born, but at the same time we have about 55 million people died. So there is a net natural increase in the population about 77 million. Yeah. Kalau ditukar kepada on a daily basis, we would see that there are about more than 360 birth in a year throughout the world. At the same time, 150,000 deaths. Yeah, so we have a net growth of about 200 plus sikit lah, ya, of natural increase every day. Kalau ditukar kepada jam, kita ada mempunyai 8,000 penduduk yang bertambah pada satu hari. Per minute is about 148. So every second we have an additional 2 people, yeah, added to the world. Okay. All right. So that is the situation, yeah, how fast we are growing, yeah, number of people in the world. But mindful also of what is happening. For example, that did not take into consideration the COVID-19 cases over the past 2 years, yeah, which have caused a lot of death as well, yeah, by the millions throughout the world. So in terms of graph, this is how it looks like, yeah, from 1750 to somewhere around here we are, yeah, and also the forecasted, yeah, the forecasted population data. So actually the growth rate has been highest around 1960, yeah, 1950, 1960. That's the highest growth rate, but it has been slowing down after that, yeah, slowing down. So that is the, all right. So the average annual growth rate, this is the percentage lah. So makin betul menurun, and the average annual increase, that's the increase in the population. Okay, any question, any comment? Hold on. Doubling time. Doubling time ini merujuk kepada in a simple term, ya, merujuk kepada period taken for current population number to double at a specific growth rate. Itu, that's exactly the definition of it lah. Maknanya, how long does it take for a certain population at certain time to double, yeah, the size of the population, given a specific growth rate, berdasarkan kepada specific growth rate. Jadi ianya bergantung kepada faktor yang sangat penting di sini adalah the growth rate, population growth rate in terms of percentage. Yeah. So the equation is, this is how somehow they come out with that equation, is equal to 70 divided by the growth rate. 70 is a magic number here. So kalau let's say our growth rate is 2%, maknanya the doubling time, ya, ataupun the number of years for the population to double its size will be equals to 70 divided by 2, ya, it is 2%. Right? Jadi mengambil masa 35 tahun contohnya. Okay, so itu yang dimaksudkan. But if the growth rate is 1.3%, for example, let's say this growth rate here is 1.3%, the doubling time would be 54 years. Ianya 70 dibahagikan dengan 1,3. So that would take about 54 years to double the population size. Okay, so in other words, if the current population is about 13.6 billion people, then it will, I mean the current population yang ada di dunia ni 7 something billion tadi kan. You double that, it will take about 54 years, and that is estimated to be by the year 2065. Will have about 13 billion. Itu hanya estimate sajalah. Tapi ada a lot of demographers who thinks that the world population will never reach the 13 billion people. A lot of demographers said that the world population will probably level of around 10 to 11 billion. The reason behind this is that the rate of population growth is slowing down. Ada yang sampai kosong, maknanya there's no increase in the population. Ada yang negative pula in terms of population growth. So that is the reason. So the trend here is almost, particularly in the developed countries, most of these countries are experiencing a very low population growth rate, less than 1% and so on. Jadi itu yang menyebabkan pertumbuhan populasi itu agak lambat and also expected to level off to around 10, 11 billion, 9 to 11 billion lah. They're not sure how many exactly, but it depends on many factors. Yeah. So you see, for example, the growth rate in 1960s was about 2%. So if you look at that at 3 billion people at around 1960, yeah, what would be the doubling time? Berapa tahun agaknya? Using the formula 70 divided by growth rate tadi. So it will take about 35 years, meaning that kalau mengikut equation ini, the 6 billion mark would be reached, assuming that the growth rate maintains at 2%, yeah, on average. Yeah, it will reach by the berapa? Plus 35, 1995, kan 35 tahun. Okay, so we look back at the this population here, right? From 3 billion 1960, and let's say 1995. Almost, not quite accurate, but just a difference of just a few years. 1999 instead of 1995, yeah, hitting that figure of 7 billion tadi, yeah, quite close. The reason behind the yang bertambah kepada instead of 1995 but 4 years later is probably because in some developed countries the rate of population growth sudah menurun, ya, ke tahap yang begitu rendah sekali. Right? So let's see, I have something here. I don't know if you can see it now, but I will try to now you can see it now, ya. Belum dapat lihat kan?
Belum, Prof.
Belum. Okay, let me close this one and then share. Let's make it optimize. Kita coba saja. Not sure whether you can see. Okay, this is the one. Okay, this is from the internet lah. This is in Malaysia. Dan kalau kita lihat kepada populasi, pertumbuhan populasi di Malaysia, ianya sangat-sangat okay, quite high in the beginning, then has been slowing down since what year was this? 1985. It has been, that's the peak, yeah. Other than, of course, prior to that, yeah. So this is the, actually you can see from here, the rate of growth, population growth rate throughout the years for Malaysia, yeah. So kita boleh lihat, yeah. So when we were 2.9%, that's quite high, a very high growth rate, masih tinggi. And so our doubling time juga rendah, ya. Dibandingkan dengan sekarang ini, okay, where is the 2%? Let's say this is the, no, that's around here. Yeah, around here, 2% growth rate. Okay, so if we maintain, let's assume that population growth rate itu hanya maintain the 2%, they will expect about 35 years to double the population, but it is not. Unfortunately, what happened is the population growth rate in Malaysia is semakin berkurangan, semakin increasing in terms of the growth rate. At the moment, it's 1.2%, 1.294%. So it's very slow, yeah, very slow in terms of the population growth rate. Yeah? Okay, so you can look at this one, yeah. What else do we have here? So kita sekarang about 1.3 bandingkan dengan negara lain. Afghanistan 2.3, that's still high, yeah. So that explained more or less why the population of Afghanistan is still growing. Tapi negara seperti Albania itu negara yang berdekatan dengan Ukraine sekarang ini, sudah mula below zero, minus 0.6. Yeah? Algeria 1.8. American Samoa minus 0.2. So they're worried the population is depleting, more or less. Andorra 0.2. Right? The highest Angola ni Africa 3.2. That's very high, yeah, by world standard. Okay, what else? Ammonia, okay, former Soviet Union, yeah, these countries. Yeah, so you look at this, most of these countries are falling below 1%. Bahrain, 3.6, that's very high. Okay, what else? Belarus, 0.4%. Belarus ini negara yang membantu Vladimir Putin ataupun Rusia, membantu Rusia untuk memerangi Ukraine sekarang ini. Okay, because the leader was more or less appointed by Russia to lead Belarus. Okay, so you can see from here, the trends adalah ianya makin turun. Tidak banyak negara yang mempunyai pertumbuhan populasi lebih daripada 3. Most of these yang ada 3 tu are in African countries. Right? This chat Africa, di apa nama tu lagi? Burundi also Africa. What else? Yeah. Not okay. Equatorial Guinea also in Africa. Yeah. Okay, so that's the trend ya. Berkenaan dengan pertumbuhan populasi sekarang. Okay. Let me go back to what am I sharing with you now? Yeah, podcast sekarang. Let's stop that one and share my notes again. Okay. All right. Okay, so back to the doubling time tadi ya. So jadi faham konsep doubling time itu adalah merujuk kepada time taken ataupun period taken for current population number to double at a specific growth rate. Jadi yang penting adalah the numerator adalah 70, the denominator adalah the percentage growth rate today. Yeah, so if you know this growth rate, and you should be able to estimate. Maybe not very accurate, but close to it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what is the concept doubling time? Tu kadang orang merujuk kepada demographers look at the tail of the Persian chessboard. Jadi tail Persian chessboard saya nak tunjukkan dengan video di sini. Sekejap. I don't know if I can show you what exactly that is. Yeah. Ya, berhenti sekejap. Okay. Let me. Okay, kejap. I'm gonna stop. I think I'm gonna stop this one and say, okay. Pernah dengar kan cerita Persian chessboard ni? Tak pernah. Okay, kalau tak pernah tak apa. Kita dengar ceritanya.
And Paul Price.
Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Just the 12th.
Sorry, Prof.
So,
We cannot hear the video.
tak boleh. Okay. Tak boleh dengar. Macam mana pula? Okay, kejap. Kita mainkan sebelah ya. Let me go back. Let me go back. How did I do it last time? I don't know. Optimus. Maybe that's the one. Kejap. We start all over again, boleh? Share. Okay, kejap. Saya tarik.
Ambalapooza is a small town in southern India which is famous for two things: the Sri Krishna temple and Pal Payasam. Pal Payasam is a dessert that's made mostly of sweetened boiled.
Sorry, can you hear now?
Yes, Doctor.
Yes, Prof.
Okay, I'm learning something new. Okay, so let's continue.
Milk and rice.
Return.
According to legend, the king of Ambalapooza was a big chess enthusiast, and he often challenged visitors to a game. One day, a travelling sage arrived at the court of the king and challenged him to a game of chess. The king accepted and asked the sage what he'd like as a prize if he won. The sage said he'd like some rice. He'd like 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, and for the number to be doubled for each square after that. So the king put a single grain of rice on the first square, 2 grains on the second square, 4 on the third and 8 on the fourth. He looked at the grains and thought what a ridiculously modest prize. He accepted the sage's wish and the game began. The sage played well and easily won. True to his word, the king ordered a bag of rice to be brought and started to count out the grains onto the squares. He was shocked when he got to just the 12th square and found that he needed to put 2,048 grains onto it. He realized that the prize was going to be a lot bigger than it had first seemed. After a long calculation, he figured out that for the 30th square, he'd need about 536 million grains. By the 40th square, he'd need about 550 billion grains of rice, and for the last square, the 64th, he'd have to count out a staggering 9,220,000 trillion grains. Altogether, he'd have to give the sage about 18,500,000 trillion grains. A single long grain of rice weighs, on average, about 0.029 grams, so the total weight of rice that the king needed to give the sage was about 535 billion tons. That's more than 1,000 times greater than all the world's milled rice production in 2019-20. The king realized it was impossible for him to pay his debt. In the legend, the sage turns out to be the god Krishna in disguise. When he saw how upset the king was, he appeared to the king in his true form. He told the king that he didn't have to settle the debt immediately, but could pay it over time. So the king started to serve pal payasam in the temple free every day to pilgrims until the debt was cleared. In mathematics, this kind of growth is described as exponential, and as we've seen, it can give rise to large numbers very quickly. The function describing the number of grains of rice per square is 2 to the x minus 1, where x is the number of squares, and you can see from the graph how steeply it grows. So remember the legend of Ambalapooza, and if you're ever in town, don't forget to visit the temple for your free bowl of rice.
Okay, so that's the story about the game of chess tadi. Okay, kedap. Okay, boleh faham tadi apa maksudnya? It's basically talking about the growth of the population dalam bentuk exponential growth. Yeah. So the concept of doubling time too actually was related to the legend tadi lah, game of chess tadi, the Persian game of chess tadi. All right. Any question? Comments? Tak ada. Kalau tak ada, kita teruskan lah. All right. So the tale of Persian chessboard. And okay, so go back to reality. The world population took a few thousand years to hit 14 million, of course, yeah. So approximately 1,000 years to double to 27 million in the beginning, ya, sangat-sangat lambat, ya. 1,000 years to double to 27 million because of the slow growth, ya, sebabkan oleh population growth was very low. And about 400 years to double after that, ya, semakin kurang. And by after 1750, which is the age of the Industrial Revolution, of course, it only took less than 100 years to double, yeah, from 1,000 years to 400 years to 100 years to double. And of course now it's about 40 years, ya. Jadi lebih kurang 40 tahun untuk populasi dunia ni globally to double, ya. Jadi untuk negara kita, as you can see from the graph tadi, ya, interactive graph tadi menunjukkan bahawa kita punya populasi, now if I remember well, our population in the 1980, I think, was about 13 million people. And now, what, about 40 years later, it has gone up to 30 plus million. So our doubling time is slightly more than less than 40 years, ya, untuk populasi Malaysia untuk meningkat 2 kali ganda, ya. Okey, ini analisis yang telah dibuat menunjukkan the number of years to double, ya, from 1 billion, it takes about 120 years to double the 2 billion, daripada 2 billion to 4 billion. Of course, sampai inilah. It takes about 33 plus 14, 47 years untuk sampai from 2 billion to the 4 billion. Tapi yang di sini itu menunjukkan doubling time tadi lah, ya. So semakin well, the highest ataupun the shortest lah, ya. That would be correct. The shortest doubling time was around 1987. That's where the growth rate was very high, ya. Pertumbuhan populasi sangat-sangat tinggi. Now it is slowing down. In other words, the doubling time is getting longer. So it will take some time before the next billion comes in. Yeah, itu dari segi doubling time there. Right. Okay, so there is an explosion of the world population. Right. If you look at this graph, ada beberapa perkara yang ditunjukkan di sini. The black line here is the current population of the world and estimated or forecasted based on high, low, and medium projection. Jadi based on medium projection, kita punya populasi akan mencapai something like 9, about 9 plus sikit-sikit lah, of population by the year 2100. Okay. Based on high projection, maksudnya the world population is growing at a very fast rate, maka kita akan mencapai 14 billion population by the year 2100 tadi. But on a low projection, assuming that sorry, but there's some scam call. Anyway, low projection, assuming that the population growth rate is very low, the population will hit about 6 million. This is not quite likely. I think this projection, the medium projection, is most likely, yeah, rather than this one or this one. Okay, so as I said just now, I think our population probably level of around 10 to 11 billion, or could be as low as 9 billion, yeah, in the future, in the probably about 50 or 70 years from now. Jadi apa sebabnya slow early growth, yeah, in terms of population? Ada beberapa perkara. Of course, you know, some of those reasons, I suppose. These are some of the guesses lah, some apa nama tu, assumptions, ya. Yang pertama sekali, hunter-gatherer society, they have a very low life expectancy. In other words, the life expectancy in those years was about 20 years. 20 years on average, ya. Seorang manusia dilahirkan and they live up to 20 years on average. Some may have higher than that, maybe 30, 40 years, and some may be lower, but on average about 20 years. So in other words, it's probably enough to reach maturity, to reproduce, getting married and have children. That age lah, sampai umur 20 tahun. And then they disappear, they die off, yeah. Very low life expectancy. Okay. Yang keduanya adalah half of the children, sorry, it's missing. Let me correct that. Yeah. Yep. Let me close this one dulu. Yeah, something not right. Is not correct. Okay. I think the word died too. Tertinggal tadi. Ini. Okay. Yang sudah dibetulkan. Maksudnya half of the children died before reaching age 5. Ya. So about 50% survival rate lah, more or less. Ya. Lepas itu sampai umur 5 tahun. And then after that, they may also die because of diseases and so on. Yeah. And probably because there's not enough food as well. So women purposely limited number of children for them to be able to work, yeah. So easier for them to carry and also to nurse while walking. Nah, ini mengikut apa nama yang pendapat Duman ataupun yang dituliskan dalam artikel yang dibuat oleh Duman in 1975. So they explain in certain countries, for example, the number of children limited by the women because they have to bring the children to work, right? So with less children, it's easier for them, yeah, to take care. Another reason, okay? Another reason is abstinence. Do you know what is the meaning of abstinence? It's referring to a period where husband and wife, you know, having not only living but also having sexual contact, if you will. Right. So abstinence is the period where they abstain from, as a result of having children today. Yeah. So abstinence is one of the things because they don't have the technology like what we have nowadays. Yeah, they don't have any family planning and so on. So what they do secara naturalnya adalah melakukan abstinence. So when the baby is born, ataupun when the wife is pregnant, the husband go somewhere else, yeah, and for maybe for 1 or 2 years and so on, and then they come back, something like that. Yeah. According to apa nama, writers like Howell and Lee, yeah. So, and also abortion, or probably to some extent infanticide as well, yeah, being practiced. Those are possible reasons for that. And also the old and the sick also risk abandonment when no longer productive. Yang tua, yang apa nama tu, yang sakit, you know, remember in those times they don't have sistem perubatan yang ada pada hari ini, right? So if you're sick, the risk of dying is very, very, very high. So those contribute to the slow growth in the population earlier on. And then came the agricultural revolution, the growth increase as a result of that, as death rates are lowered due to more settled life, ya. Jadi dengan adanya revolusi pertanian, pertumbuhan populasi meningkat, ya, as people have food, yeah, and less people are dying. So sedentary life was supposed to be supposedly improved living condition with constant supply of food. However, and that will lead to lower rate of death lah. And so the birth rate also maintain. Jadi itu menyumbang kepada peningkatan peningkatan kepada pertumbuhan populasi. Tetapi sebenarnya sedentary life is not doing much. That's what it is. Yeah, you just stay at home with food available and so on. So you don't really work hard. Yeah, like what it used to do. So sedentary life cause problem of sanitation, spread of diseases, and also increased risk of death as well. Right. So that is the consequences of that. Right, and then right. So the benefit of sedentary life exceeded the risk of death. So there is even though it pada masa sedentary life itu menyumbang kepada kematian juga, tetapi there is a positive net effect in terms of the growth of the population. Yeah. So itu yang dikatakan, ya. Right. So okay, not doing much. Sedentary itu maksudnya not doing much lah. Sitting down, relax, not doing much work. Okay. So the prospect of birth during the agricultural revolution, that women's health and ability to conceive, yeah, and bear children improve due to the better diet, better food, better diet. And so the overall effect is there is an increase in fertility, yeah. The number of children born to a woman. Okay, so with the agricultural revolution. And then secondly, food for baby also are readily available, so they don't have to necessarily rely on breastfeeding ataupun breast milk. Okay? So that leads to shorter birth intervals and increase the birth rate as well. So jadi the net effect adalah the birth rate ataupun kadar kelahiran meningkat, ya, disebabkan oleh agricultural revolution, ya, adanya food available and health of women are better off, and availability of food for babies as well. Okay, so and then The recent rapid growth, there are various reasons for that. Contohnya, by 1750, it marked the acceleration in population growth, as we have seen earlier on, ya, pada graph yang saya tunjukkan awal tadi, because of the decline in death rates due to the rise in the economic development, ya, which is true for particularly for developed countries. Economic development increase, and that also affect the death rate, yeah, declining in the death rate. And better food as well, yeah, warmer clothes. Remember, I mean, try to imagine during those time before the advent of before the Industrial Revolution and so on. Yeah? So the clothes they were wearing, imagine, during particularly in temperate regions, yeah, where they have cold climate and so on. Yeah? So without the proper cloth to warm them up, that is also another reason why early death comes to the population in the past. Yeah? Now better food, warmer clothing, clean water, improved houses, better hygiene, among other things. Yeah? Even the simple things like taking bath, washing hands with soap, those are very simple hygiene practices, but those have proven to be effective against bacteria infection and so on. Yeah? So that lower the exposure to diseases and better resistance to illness ataupun penyakit lah, kurang-kurangnya penyakit. Okay? So people are less frequent sickness. Yeah? And by 1900, there is a reduction of death due to public health movement and also improvement in medicine technologies, yeah, medicinal technologies. Okay. In Europe and North America, they experience growth due to economic development. Jadi pertumbuhan ekonomi ataupun pembangunan ekonomi, ya, menyumbang kepada peningkatan, ya, dari segi pertumbuhan populasi. Yeah, so the experience it's experienced early, but in other parts of the world or the rest of the world, it only happened after the World War II. Yeah, World War II. Most of the developing countries. So in the less developed countries, mortality rate also reduced, but fertility rate maintained. Yeah, mortality rate itu boleh dikurangkan disebabkan oleh availability of medicines and also food lah. Tapi fertility rate maintain high. Ya, jadi the end result for the developed for the less developed countries is the rapid population growth. Pertumbuhan populasi agak tinggi di kalangan negara yang sedang membangun. So, in the future, it is expected that the less developed nation will contribute to the population growth. Yeah, not only to their own country but also to the growth in the developed nations through migration. In other words, people from less developed countries are migrating to the developed countries. Yeah. Okay, so if you, I'm not sure if I can share this, another video. Let me set this one first, and then stop sharing. Let me know if there is a problem with the video, dari segi sound ataupun picture. Okay. Okay. Okay, so every one of these points here, the yellow dot here, represent 1 million people, right? Okay, so that is video on population through time lah. All right, always to illustrate the growth of the population, also the events that took place during history, yeah, in history. Okay, all right, let me just go back to the lecture. All right, so kita ambil break for 5 minutes and then we'll continue after that. Leah, take 5 minute break, yeah. Oke, kita berhenti sekejap ya.
Oke, Prof.
Okey, kita sambung balik ya. Alright. Seterusnya, we look at the distribution or redistribution rather of the world population through migration. Yeah. So migration flows from the area of high growth, population high growth, okay, or rapidly growing population into less rapidly growing populations. Yeah, into areas where the population growth is low. For example, the trend is from countries in Latin America to the South America, and also Asia to migrated to the United States or USA. Okay. Another trend is also from Asia to Canada, and from Africa and Asia to Europe. Yeah. So that's the trends in terms of the migration. So in the earlier years, as population grew dense in particular region, people moved to a less populated area. That's kind of natural, yeah. In other words, people are moving away from a densely populated region to a less densely populated area. Right? And the less developed regions, in terms of the future population growth, reaching the year 2050, for example. And this is the projection. Okay, so population for more developed nations, out of the 200 million people, about one fifth ataupun 20% more or less lah, living in the developed nations, and the rest are in the less developed nations. Okay. So the projection based on medium fertility variant, the projection to year 2050, the changes will be that there will be more and more people are living in the less developed nation. Kalau dibandingkan, there is an increase here from for the more developed nation, but the increase is rather very, very minimal. But if you see for the less developed nations, you can see a very drastic jump, yeah, almost 40% of the increase in the population from the previous year, yeah. So in terms of the increase between the year 2000 and 2005, this is the increase is about 42 million in developed nations, but for the less developed nation is 2.9 billion growth. Okay, jadi boleh dikatakan bahawa in terms of the percentage will increase, which are attributable to each area, developed and less developed nation. 99% of the growth in the population in the future will be happening in the less developed countries. Yeah, so about not quite 100%, but 99% of the future growth in populations are happening in the less developed countries of the world. Ya. Oke, nah ini tadi ada ditunjukkan pada more or less lah yang ditunjukkan dalam video tadi. Right, so this is the proportion, or rather the picture to show the future, even from the past lah. Tapi yang apa yang nak tunjuk sini is the difference between developed and developing countries itu sangat ketara. So this is where the rest of the populations are. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the geographic distribution, so most of the people in the world are living in the less developed countries. Yeah. In the more developed countries, particularly in the West, including North America, including Western Europe, and also Tokyo pula, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, and so on. Yeah, they have very low population growth rate. Yeah, so, jadi tak banyak manusia. Yeah. Okay, so. And if you look by regions, and this is looking at distribution of the world population, kalau kita lihat, by the way, look at this key here. The dark blue color is the 1800. The lighter gray is 1900. Then we have the darker blue. Sorry, what do you call this? Deep blue is 2000, and the lighter blue is the year 2050. Jadi kalau kita bandingkan all this area, this is North America, this is Europe, Asia, Oceania, yeah, then Africa and Latin America. Kita boleh nampak di sini kebanyakan populasi in the world. Ya, kalau dulunya tinggi di let's say in Europe, they have quite high population, ya, 20% of the population of the world population were living there. Tapi sekarang ini in the future, as it is now, they have gone down to probably about 10 to 12% of the world population. Yeah. So on the other hand, we have increasing number of people who are in Panama, Latin America, and increasing number of people who are living in the African countries. Yeah. By the year 2050, about 20% of people are living in Africa, compared to something like 8% or less than 10% before 1900. Okay, jadi so this, in other words, Asia is where the population are since the beginning, and also masih kekal tinggi, almost 60%, or 60% around now, and also in the future, the next 30 years and so on. Yeah, so quite high. So this is where the population is. Okay, so berkenaan dengan the current world distribution, geographically, and also the future. Right. Now, kalau nak lihat the world population distribution, the top most populated countries in 2020, this is the figure 2020. Saya nampak tadi compared to the figure for the year 2022, cuma apa yang bertukar adalah di antara negara Germany dengan Iran. The rest are still as it is in terms of ranking lah. Right, so now Iran has overtaken Germany. Germany telah turun dari segi the size of the population. So these are the top 20, masih lagi kekal, the top 20 countries with the largest population, with China in the lead, followed by India. Okay, so this is the one that I look at just now. Saya nampak perubahan hanya pada nombor 18 dan 19 bertukar. Ya. Kalau dulunya in 2020 it was Germany lebih sedikit daripada Iran, tapi sekarang ini Iran has overtaken Germany, but the other countries still remain as it is. Ya. Cuma India is closing the gap with China. India is closing. So soon most demographers are expecting India to overtake China in terms of the overall size of the population in the country. Tidak lama lagi kalau jangka akan. The forecast is based on the growth rate, population growth rate in India as compared to the growth rate in China. China semakin menurun, sedangkan India maintains. Even though it's going down, but still bigger than the Chinese population growth rate. Okay, so projected growth, as I mentioned, between China and India, very high competition. Right, so the Indian by 2030 dijangkakan India will overtake China in terms of the population size. Right, so this is the projected increase, yang warna yang gelap sedikit. Okay. Right, so rates of population growth are also highest in the middle latitudes. Itu secara kebetulan ataupun disebabkan faktor-faktor tertentu. Right, maksudnya along the equatorial regions of the world. Okay. Now, if you look at this one here, this is the rate of population growth, which is highest in the middle latitudes. Maknanya this is the rate of growth lah in terms of percentage. Contohnya 3% and higher in African countries. 2%, and also you can find this in African countries as well, and Guinea, and only a certain part of Central America. And then the rest of the countries are experiencing apa nama tu less, ya, in terms of growth rate, kurang daripada from 0 to 1%. Many countries. Russia is experiencing zero or minus growth rate in terms of its population. Not so much because mungkin juga peperangan yang menyumbang kepada penurunan, but I think it's just growth rate tu dari segi kadar kelahiran juga tak banyak, ya, dan sedangkan kematian juga meningkat because of the war. Because if you look at history, Russia ni banyak terlibat dalam peperangan, ya. Ever since the World War I, World War II, and also the Cold War between US dengan Russia, and now they have also peperangan di Afghanistan juga mereka terlibat, peperangan di Chechen, di Georgia, and so on. They also lost life, ya, particularly among the soldiers, ya, of the Russian Republic. Okay, so jadi ini cuma nak menunjukkan, ya, tentang the current rate of growth in between the countries of the world. Okay. Okay, kalau tadi kita lihat kepada the top 30 countries most populated, sekarang ni the least populated pula, ya. The least populated countries, 10 least populated countries. These are small, many of these are small islands, by the way, like Tuvalu, Nauru, Palau, sorry, San Marino, yeah. But other countries are in Europe as well, yeah. So Vatican is a small place, by the way, but it is a country, right? Only have about not many people, by the way. Yeah, very small size, right? I don't know how they can call that a country. It's just a part of a city, actually. Yeah? Tuvalu, Nauru, San Marino, Monaco, right? Saint Kitts and Nevis. These countries, even though small, but they produce good athletes, by the way, yeah, good runners and so on. Right? Monaco is also a small country, by the way, but rich lah, because population size per GDP per capita tinggi untuk negara berkenaan. So anyway, just in case you are wondering which countries have the smallest population. Okay. I'm not sure. Let me check on this. I put it there. I thought it would be interesting, but kejap, ya. Saya review dulu, nanti saya kongsikan. Okay, boleh kongsikan. So saya coba sekali lagi. Yep, share and share. Okay. Short video. That's the pen. All of that. And this is one of the fastest growing country in the world in terms of population. feature negara yang besar sebenarnya with a lot of islands. Largest Islamic country in terms of population. Okay, all right. Yeah, stop sharing. Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, back to the lecture. So trend in the future, ini yang dijangkakan lah ya. Seperti yang saya katakan tadi, most of the growth in the population or future population growth will be found in the less developed countries, right? Or the less, yeah, correct, that's the less developed country. But among the less developed countries itu ada juga negara yang dinamakan sebagai least developed, ya, yang paling kurang membangun, right? So the fear is, of course, in these areas where the population growth rate is still high, and saya kata the fear is because when we talk about population growth and food supply, that's where things can become difficult. Yeah, the worry is about whether or not the poor countries can support the growing population. All right, so well, this is not the latest actually. If you want to see the latest, you can click on this link down here on the older meters to see the current. This is somewhere figure about 2 years ago, I think, 7 billion people. Now, as I said just now, I checked, was 7.9 billion, yeah, the current world population. Okay, so the next topic that I would like to touch on today is the concept of demographic transition. Yeah, the concept of demographic transition. Apa yang dinamakan sebagai transition di sini. Okay, jadi DT ataupun demographic transition refers to the transition, yeah, from high birth and high death rate, ya, itu yang pertama, high birth and high death rates, to a lower birth and also lower death rates, ya. So the transition is from high birth and death to lower birth and death rates, ya. Sebabnya adalah ada kaitan dengan pembangunan, ya, ekonomi, dan lebih-lebih lagi yang berkaitan dengan industrialized economic system. Yeah. So from a pre-industrial, so high birth and high death rates ini is associated with the pre-industrial period, ya, ataupun sebelumnya industrialization. And then after industrialization, the economy picks up, yeah, and many other things lah, ya. As the country develop, dia punya ekonomi, the means of support dari segi makanan dan juga bekalan lain, termasuk medicine, termasuk hospitals, education and so on has improved the life of people. So that actually has helped to lower down the birth rate as well as the death rate as well. So that is the transition that we're talking about, the demographic transition. Okay, so it involves birth and death tadi ya, perubahan kepada kadar kematian dan juga kadar kematian, kelahiran ya. So the demographic transition model is a model of demographic transition which suggests that the population's mortality as well as fertility would decline, would decline as a result of the social and economic development. Jadi pembangunan ekonomi dan pembangunan sosial telah menyebabkan penurunan tersebut. Okay. So it is predicted that all countries would over time go through the 4 demographic transition stages. Jadi dalam demographic transition model itu ada 4, at least this is the original model lah, original demographic transition model, 4 stages. The stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Stage 1 itu refers to the pre-industrial stage, yang dari sini, where the birth rates and death rates are high. So the death rates fluctuates, some are because of the pandemic and so on, contohnya lah. So birth rates are high for quite some time until the transition stage. This is the transition stage, transition from high to low. Tapi yang mula-mula turun itu adalah death rates. Death rate mula-mula turun, and not the birth rate turun tapi agak lambat sedikit. If you look at stage 2 here, so the death rate declines mainly due to increased food production and also improved medical care. Those are 2 main reasons why the death rates decline faster compared to the birth rate. Okay. So we see here the difference between birth and death tu menyumbang kepada peningkatan kepada natural growth in the population. And then at this stage, during the industrial stage, this is when the biggest transition in terms of the birth rate tadi. So birth rate declines mainly due to increased opportunities for women to participate in pekerjaan dan sebagainya, and also having access to birth control, opportunities for education, opportunities for employment, plus having access to birth control, which contribute towards the declining birth rates. And the death rate will maintain over time. It will be maintained for some time lah, until later stage. Ianya takkan turun to a very low rate, because as you get older, because of course you will die. Person will die. So the birth rates in post-industrial stage, both are declined. Both are very low. So those are the basic dalam the basic demographic transition model, right? So that is stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so what effect has it on the population growth? Now, as I said just now, the biggest effect is around here in terms of how fast population grow. It's between here. The bigger the difference between birth rate dengan death rate, the higher is the population growth rate. Okay. So stage 1, this is again to repeat, high birth rates, high death rates, and this population doesn't grow that much. So in other words, stable population, but low, low population but stable. Then the stage 2, this is the stage where you get death rate dia turun very very fast, lowered, and the birth rate eventually also follow ya. Kalau kita lihat di sini, birth rate itu akan mengikut ya penurunan pada kadarnya sama juga dengan birth rate tadi ya. So this area here indicates the period of rapid population growth. And then at this stage, this is where the population level off more or less. The birth rates drop to near death rate, so the population is kind of stable, ya, tidak akan berubah banyak, ya. And what happened after that? Some orang yang telah cuba untuk meramalkan ataupun mengatakan bahawa there will be a stage 5, which is extension of the 4 stages in the demographic transition model tadi. Okay, so what I want you to know is that in the first phase of the demographic transition model, this is where the birth rate and death rates are high. Both are high here. So population, in terms of population size, ini kecil. But once the death rate has decreased, and it's the one that's happening fast compared to the birth rate agak lambat sikit, so that contributes toward the population increase tadi, the difference between the death and birth rate tadi. That's the natural increase. Yeah? Okay, so if you want to relate it to sebabnya ataupun reasons for the changes tadi, boleh dilihat dalam table ini ataupun graf ini, ya. Okay, so for example, this you can see high birth rate, high death rate. So natural increase is stable ataupun slow. There are many reasons for the changes in the birth rates. Yeah, many children needed for farming. Ya, itu satu keperluan mengapa birth rate tinggi, because of the need for tenaga pekerja. Yeah, so many children at the same time die at early age because of those tidak ada sistem perubatan seperti yang kita ada, and also for many other reasons lah. So religious ataupun social encouragement, no family planning. Ya, jadi agama menggalakkan contohnya keluarga mempunyai lebih anak dan sebagainya. Ya, so social and religious encouragement. Okay, and then itu stage 2. Ya, so there is a very rapid increase, or that contribute to the very rapid increase in the population due to the falls in the death rate, but birth rate masih tinggi ya dalam dua fasa ini. Example of countries which are still at this stage, Egypt, Kenya, India. I think Malaysia is out of that already by now. And then stage 3 ini is late expanding, they call it. This is where the birth rate mulai turun, and birth rate juga turun. Yeah, so that in terms of the natural increase slows down, semakin berkurangan. Dan sebabnya adalah ia berkaitan dengan improvement as far as birth is concerned, berkaitan dengan improvement in medical care, diet, and so on. Yeah. Tapi yang dikaitkan dengan death rate itu penurunannya adalah also improvement in medical care, sanitation meningkat, water supply, and so on. So fewer children die at early age. Okay. In the 4th stage tadi, ini negara-negara yang sudah maju, where many of these countries are already there. Ini contohnya US, Japan, France, UK, yeah, where birth and death rates are low. So the population of those countries are stabilized, And so the reasons for the changes in birth rate is due to family planning, better health, improving status of women in terms of employment, in terms of education, also later marriages and so on, ya. And in terms of death rate, yang kurang di situ adalah disebabkan oleh apa namanya, good health care and also reliable food supply. Yang saya kata yang apa nama possibility of fifth stage tadi adalah this is where the population of the world is expected to decline. Ya, kalau negara-negara di dunia termasuk yang sedang membangun sekarang ini, dia punya pertumbuhan populasi juga turun. Ya, so in other words, the difference between the death dengan birth rate itu birth rate semakin turun sehingga falls below the death rate. Yeah, so meaning a lot more people dying, less people are born. Yeah, so overall, what happened is there's a very slow decrease in the population. Yeah, birth rate very low and also death rate low. So the net result is negative. Ya. Jadi itu yang contoh negara tadi adalah negara seperti Germany. Ya. I think Canada is also another one that experience such situation. Yang ini juga tambahan nota tadi. This is in terms of the years lah. Tapi itu dulu ya. This is what it is happening in Europe dulu. Tapi di negara yang sedang membangun sekarang ini ada juga negara yang masih berada pada stage 1 ini. Some very less developed countries are belonging to this area here. Okay. Jadi ini tambahan lah. So this is based on the European model ataupun keadaan di Europe. Okay, so the contemporary example are here. Okay, kalau di Europe 1750 contohnya stage 2, yang negara yang berada pada peringkat tersebut yang sekarang ini nowadays termasuk Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Kenya, is equivalent ya. So negara Barat memang dah lama dah ya, mencapai tahap tersebut. Ya. Okay, jadi so that is the concept of demographic transition tadi ya. Question? Masih ada? You still with me? Okay, let me show you this one ya. Mungkin dengan ini boleh menjelaskan lagi ya. Konsep demographic transition model. Sekejap ya. Let me set this up. Okay. Okay. Do you see this?
Are you concerned about overpopulation? It certainly is a controversial topic. With over 7 billion humans on the planet, some people worry about whether there are enough resources to meet everyone's needs. Did you know that since the agricultural revolution 8,000 years ago until the Industrial Revolution, which began in 1750, that the world's population grew by only 67,000 people every year? Now we gain that many people every 6 to 7 hours. Thank you, Paul Ehrlich, for that huge wake-up call. With fertility rates so much higher than mortality rates, particularly in less industrialized countries, we are experiencing exponential growth, and it isn't expected to level off until we hit 9 to 10 billion people in 2050. There are different ways to deal with this, and not everybody agrees with each other. One way depends on what is called the demographic transition theory, which tells the history of how mortality and fertility rates have dropped with industrialization. Let's start by talking about mortality, also known as death rates, and fertility, or birth rates. For most of human history, we were in stage 1. See how the mortality and fertility rates were really high? Because of things like the plague, famine, war, and poor living conditions, people died pretty young. To make up for all those people dying, they had to have a lot of babies. Of course, there were other reasons too. I'm sure you can imagine a few. First, we need to recognize that children were defined as assets. They were workers, of course, usually helping their families with different tasks. A woman's status was also defined by how many children she had, especially if they were boys. And these women and children were seen as property and therefore represented the wealth of men. They also would want to make sure that enough children would live long enough to take care of them when they were old. Throw in religious and cultural norms, and you can see why the fertility rates were so high. Then something shifted. You can see that beginning in 1750, with the start of the Industrial Revolution, that mortality rates began to drop. The early industrial era of stage 2 is marked by improvements in sanitation and healthcare. But notice that the fertility rates stay high. This is known as a cultural lag, because the technology that improved mortality rates changed faster than the culture's ability to adapt. Think about it. How long would it take to simply have faith that your babies would live, so you didn't have to have so many? 1, maybe 2 generations? What about the time it would take to change gender roles or religious norms? Well, that's a long time. And over that time, look what's happening to the population level. Just do the math. If fertility rates stay high and mortality rates are low, then the population booms. Note that by stage 3, as industrialization continues, the fertility rates eventually start to drop. One of the biggest reasons for this is that children are redefined from assets to liabilities. While most people still want to have children, they choose to.
Okay, sekejap The issue tadi yang mengatakan children mula-mulanya pada stage 1 they were considered as asset, tapi pada stage 3, children were seen as liabilities. Liabilities maksudnya membebankan, more or less, ya. So that's what it means, ya.
To have far fewer than in the past. Beyond decreasing child mortality and changing elder care, girls are going to school, women are working, and most industrialized countries have child labor laws. So, bottom line, women are postponing having children. Plus, kids are expensive. So fertility rates in industrialized countries continue to drop and are now close to, if not below, replacement rates. Thus, by stage 4, in post-industrialized countries, mortality and fertility rates are both low and population growth finally stabilizes again. This looks pretty good, right? Well, there are some caveats. First, there's a big risk. What about this stage in the middle, where the fertility rates are so much higher than mortality rates? With all of this population growth, Lester Brown warns us about the risk of the demographic trap. Instead of transitioning into stage 3 and 4, a region can get overwhelmed by people and go beyond its carrying capacity. In that case, food and water and other necessities will run out. In fact, things could get so bad that they will consume all of their resources, and Mother Nature and human conflict will push them back into stage 1. It's not a pretty picture, and Mother Nature can be very harsh. We're already seeing this happening in different regions around the world, such as in Somalia, where environmental problems are becoming the #1 cause of refugees. But that's not the only risk. While some policy analysts, who are often called anti-Malthusians, believe that the answer to overpopulation is industrialization and economic development, because that is what has worked in the past, others warn that there simply aren't enough resources on the planet to enable countries all around the world to industrialize in the manner of the past. These neo-Malthusians, who base their assumptions on the teachings of Thomas Malthus, critique the demographic transition theory because they claim that the consumption rates of the industrialized world face very real limits on a finite planet. While we certainly have solved a lot of problems with science, technology, and economic development, and it is argued that there currently is enough food on the planet, if we had proper distribution, it is still unclear if industrialization is the answer to overpopulation, given our consumption rates. And of course, it never goes over well if one country tells another that they should have fewer babies. So, the reality is that population rates are complex and therefore require complex solutions. From technological breakthroughs and changes in gender roles to environmental concerns and ethnic and class issues, it is a challenge to find a balance between individual rights and community and planetary needs. We have certainly learned a lot from the demographic transition theory in the past, but it is unclear which direction the future will lead.
Okay. Any question? Gregory? Comment? Jason? Yes, bro. Okay, I see your name pop up. Tak ada? Okay. Kalau tak ada, kita continue lah. Actually, we are at the end of our lecture today. So, hold on, hold on. Kejap. I just want to show you another YouTube. Kejap. Stop sharing. Sharing another one. Hold on. That was the last slide just now, but I want to share with you another video here. Let me set it up. Kejap.
If you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, then listen closely. This latest breakthrough, involving a simple...
Hello there, everybody.
Another version of let's see, explanation of the demographic transition theory. Let me share that, just in case the first one is not quite clear. Okay, listen to this.
Really matter. Quality questions that we will get to momentarily. While watching this video, make sure to take out your guided notes. We're going to be going over a lot of different vocab in this video. We're going to be talking about different stages and a lot of different historical events. There's going to be a lot of information. So use the guided notes. You can find them in the description below. If you click them, open them up, and start working on them while I go through the video, it'll help you better understand all of this information. So starting off, we have to just talk about what this demographic transition is about. This demographic transition is looking at how countries over time change, specifically focusing on their death rates, their birth rates, and their increase rates. So we're looking at how eventually countries grow, how they shrink, what's going on with that whole process, and what are some of the causes that could occur with this. So we're going to be breaking down in this video each of the stages. Now there's 4 of them. There is a possible 5th stage that is being debated right now. And some people say it's already happening for certain countries, others saying it is to come. And some people just kind of put the 5th stage with the 4th, saying it's a natural part. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. But to start, we have to start with the beginning, which is going to be our stage 1. So stage 1 of the demographic transition model is where the majority of human history has been. Now, one thing that you need to understand, and we're going to say right off the bat, there are no longer any countries that are in stage 1. Stage 1, there may be some tribes or very small societies, but we no longer have countries. Now, sometimes this gets debated by people. They'll give kind of semantics and look at different examples of, oh, well, what about a civil war? Does that push the country back? Or genocide or things like that. That is not going to be on the AP tests, and don't get tricked by those things. There's no countries in stage 1. The AP text says it, the board says it, so we need to make sure that we understand that. Everyone has progressed into stage 2 now, for countries-wise. There definitely can be tribes and maybe other things, but for countries, we're at stage 2 for them. Now, stage 1, though, the reason why we still talk about it is this, again, was where the majority of human history has been. It's a really important stage. Think about this as hunters and gatherers. This is where we're going to be affected heavily by food shortages, disease, different environmental factors that will injure our population. War is going to be happening here. Very unstable. We don't necessarily have a good understanding of the future in this stage. This stage is going to be made up too of a CBR that is very high. We're going to have a lot of births. People are having a lot of kids. At the same time, though, we're also seeing a high CDR. People are dying a lot. We don't have a high life expectancy. Infant mortality would be very high here as well. And what we start to see then, because our CBR is high and our CDR is high, if you notice, they're kind of at the same field, so we don't have a lot of growth. These two are kind of canceling each other out. So our NIR is low. It might not even be in existence, and we might be declining possibly, or even just at 0. But for here, just remember, it's low. We're not seeing a lot of growth. And that's because of how unstable society is during this stage. Now, eventually, though, things start to change and we move into stage 2 of the demographic transition model. Over time, societies progress. They develop, they change, they evolve. And eventually, they start to move into stage 2 of the demographic transition model. Now, there's a bunch of different things that could cause this, and we're going to focus on 2 of the main ones. These 2 historical events have pushed countries over 1 into 2. Now, they happen at different points. The first big push was for the European countries and also North America, where we saw the Industrial Revolution. This is where we started to see then new signs of economic growth. We started to see new forms of medicine. The next big thing was also the medical revolution, which then brought parts of Africa, Asia into stage 2, as we started to see the diffusion of both the inventions from the Industrial Revolution and also just medicine in general. We start to see a lot of changes happen. Now, they're not always accepted by society right away, and we're going to break down what that means. So in stage 2, we have our birth rate is still very high. We're still having lots of kids, so that CBR is high. Now, the CDR is where we see change, and this is because of the Industrial Revolution and also this medical revolution. The CDR starts to rapidly decline. So we have our birth rate up here, and all of a sudden, remember from stage 1, they were even. All of a sudden now the death rate starts to go down. One of the things you can even see just by this very basic example of my hands in different spots is if we're having our births up here and our deaths over here, that increase rate is going to shoot through the roof. That escalates. We start to see high population growth and a population boom. But the question is why? Well, one of the things with penicillin and vaccines and these new different forms of even economic means, meaning jobs, we see a transition in society. But at the same time, people don't accept it yet. So when I talked about culture not fully accepting things, it's because they didn't really understand yet what's happening. Now, what that means is eventually when new things come, it takes a cultural lag. So what's happening then is people are delayed. They don't fully realize. So people still are having, hypothetically, a family of 10. And they're still expecting that infant mortality rate to be high. They don't realize that the infant mortality rate has gone down. So we're having families of 10 expecting that maybe only 5 of them will live. All of a sudden now, 8 of them are living. 9 of them, maybe even all 10 kids live. And so we're seeing that population grow, and there's a disconnect. The other thing that's happening too in this stage is we eventually start to see new forms of jobs take off. But we still have the majority of society in more agricultural. So a lot of people still rely on big family sizes to be able to support them. The big 2 things though here that are causing this stage to occur is the Industrial Revolution and the Medical Revolution. And they impacted different parts of the world. With also diffusion then, we had it where these things became more accessible, pushing all countries into stage 2. So again, high population growth, deaths are coming down, and our births are still high. Now, the time has come though to get into stage 3, as eventually we start to transition, and this is where the world starts to become a little bit divided. So in stage 3, we start to see a lot of changes. Now, these changes impact our CBR, CDR, and NIR. And I'm going to start by going over that. Then I'm going to explain why this is happening. While I'm explaining though what's happening to the CBR and CDR and NIR, try to figure out for yourself before I even get to the answer. You might be able to figure this out before I even cover it. So we have our CBR from stage 2, which was here. Our CDR is here, and our NIR is very high because we have a lot more births than deaths. In stage 3, what starts to happen is now finally, all of a sudden, our births start to drop. Now, our CDR continues to go down. It doesn't go up, and it's not staying the same. So we still have a division here. We still have our births here and our deaths here. So we still have an increase, but our NIR has started to slow. It's become more of a moderate increase. So our NIR is going down now. We're still growing, but not as much. Now the question is though, why? Why would this happen? Take a second to try and figure it out. Pause the video if you need to. Brainstorm. What could cause this to happen? If you're ready, we're going to go over the answers. One of the big things that happens in this stage is urbanization. We start to see people leaving the farms and coming into cities. We also start to see some new ways of thinking. People start realizing we have kind of a mind shift change. They realize, hey, all 10 of my kids, they all lived. I need to stop having kids. And so we see people accepting the new reality of society. Now, one thing you might be wondering is, well, why would living in a city decrease your family size? As society becomes more urbanized and more industrialization happens, we don't see as many economic advantages to having large families. Now, there's still plenty of people, even today, that have a very large family. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we see overall for trends is when you live on a farm, especially in a rural community, and when you're in those lower stages of the demographic transition model, you're going to have a lot of kids to help you out around the house. It might be because of infant mortality and you're worried of people dying. But as you start to shift into more modern day and we start to see more urbanization, it's more expensive. It's expensive to have kids in a city, and it's expensive to just take care of them. They also probably aren't providing as much money or help for you, for the family. They have other things that they will be doing. And so we start to see less advantageous aspects to life with that. And so people start to decrease their family sizes. And we also start to see just society change their mindset. And eventually this continues on into stage 4. Now stage 4 is kind of where it all comes full circle. Remember back to stage 1 when we talked about the high birth rate, the high death rate, they canceled out, and then our NIR essentially doesn't really exist or it's low? Similar thing is happening here in stage 4, and it's kind of interesting. For stage 4, our birth rate is now low. Our death rate is now low. And our NIR is going to be low, or ZPG, which means zero population growth. It'll be balanced. Now, the difference between stage 4 and 1 is we have more urbanization, we have a larger population size, it's stable, but in terms of population growth and birth rate and death rate, it's actually kind of similar. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why this happens. In 3, we just talked about urbanization. As that continues and that trend continues, we start to see even less economic advantages to having kids. We also start to see in stage 4, women get more roles in society. Women are a really big, crucial role in population growth. How society views women and their roles within society actually has a lot of impact on a society's population growth. If women are no longer looked as baby makers and now have the option to be able to participate in society and get jobs and have a career, they'll be having less children, which decreases that CBR. Our death rates are already low due to all the advancements in technology and medicine. And so we start to see things kind of become an even playing field. Even in like the United States and a lot of the developed world today, it's not uncommon for people to start having kids now as late as 25, 26, 27. Some people even in their 30s. And women still only have a certain amount of years that they can bear children. We have their childbearing years. So when women go to college and they get a degree and then they start to work and join in the workforce, they have less time to have kids, which then just lets me not able to have more. So our family sizes there are down. And also people are doing other things. A lot of people now also don't want to have families. They want to do other things. They want to travel the world and see stuff and focus on their career. That also decreases it. So stage 4, we start to see women empowerment, which decreases our population growth. And we also start to see more urbanization and just less resources to benefit people with lots of families. If anything, in modern day America, it's really expensive and you're almost at a disadvantage for having such a large family. And again, there's nothing wrong with having a large family. And if you have one, that's awesome. But now it's become more of a choice, not out of necessity, because you want to. And religion and other things impact those decisions as well. But as we see the progression of this model, we start to see culture change, we see mind shifts change, and just the way of life change. And that's why when we get to 4, it's both low and we're no longer having growth. For the total fertility rate, this is where we get around 2.1. This is the replacement rate. What that means is the average for society would be 2.1 children per woman. And that means that we're not growing. We're going to stay consistent. 0 population growth. Now, the next stage is the debated stage. This is not accepted by everyone. Some people say it's already happening with a very few amount of countries. Others say it's going to come. And some people consider this stage to be part of 4. Because one thing that can happen with stage 4 is as our population births keep going down and our deaths are also low, we might even have a negative NIR. But we're going to talk about the 5th stage now and get into why it's kind of debated and what would be happening there. Over the past couple of decades, the developed world has started to see some big changes. And a lot of it stems to these technological advances that have actually helped us decrease our death rate. We've seen the death rate keep going down. We've also had cultural shifts, though, where large families aren't seen as advantageous anymore. And more people see it as culturally acceptable to have a small family or no family. And that's brought our births down. What this has caused then is an aging population for a lot of countries. Japan being a perfect example. Russia as well has had a negative NIR for quite some time. And one of the things that this can cause is some issues within the structure of society. As the younger generation has shrunk in size, we no longer have enough people to be able to cover jobs. The other thing too is as this transition continues and as we start to see this trend spread to other developed countries, the elderly support ratio increases and in some areas also decreases. But really all that's showing us is how many people are working to support the elderly. If we don't have enough people that are able to support and provide into things like Social Security or healthcare or pensions and to be able to support our elderly population, we see an increased death as people can't afford things. Stage 5 is debated. Some people just keep it with 4 and some people say it's coming down the road. But what stage 5 is showing us is that we have a low CBR still. It's not saying that births shoot up. Our death rate though, which for 4 remember was down, they're both level, our deaths actually do start to go up. And there's a variety of factors that this could be, through new diseases possibly, through poverty, overpopulation. There's a lot of speculation with it. And with that then, our NIR goes down. We start to see a decline. Other things that can happen too, and we've seen these in the world today, is governments start to play a more active role in population control by promoting family planning or even just putting laws in place. For some countries, this is how they transition from 3 to 4 and how they continue to maintain their population the way they are. Like, for example, China with the 1-child and now also 2-child policy. They've continuously tinkered with those laws to be able to try to create a society that works for them. So there's some things to think about. Is the 5th stage actually a thing? Is it not? It's kind of up to you a little bit. But it's important for us to go over it so we have a good understanding of what's going on with the model. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it gave you a very good understanding of the demographic transition model, some events that happen within each of the stages, what's going on with the birth rate and death rate and increase rate. If it did help, please subscribe. It helps me and also it'll help you because then when I post new videos, you can get notifications. If you want, you can even hit the bell. Until next time though, I'm Mr. Sin and good luck world with your population growth.
Okay. All right. How's that? Membantu?
Prof.
Yes,
Very
Prof.
good explanation juga. Yeah.
Good, huh? Okay. Any comment? Positive, negative comment? I mean, if you look at the video, there are so many videos which explain the same thing lah. Yeah. So I hope that will help to you to understand the concept of apa nama tu concept of demographic transition model ataupun DTM. Notice that the demographic transition model does not include migration in there. The only factors to consider is the birth rate utama, keduanya death rate, dan hasil daripada the difference between the death rate dengan birth rate dengan death rate itu tadi adalah NIR ataupun natural increase rate, rate of natural increase tadi. Okey, jadi saya rasa penerangan yang telah dibuat melalui video tadi sangat jelas, sangat terang, ya, untuk membantu menjelaskan, ya, why the transitions, ya, and also please take note also that transitions are happening at different times, ya, for different countries. Cuma yang dinyatakan dalam video tadi adalah there is no country in the world right now who is in stage 1, no more. Cuma yang ada mungkin certain tribes of people within a certain country. Itu mungkin adalah, tapi as a country tidak ada lagi negara yang berada pada stage 1 of the demographic transition model. Okay, so I'm done. Any question? No comment? Okey, kalau tidak ada, setakat ini sajalah untuk kali ini tentang learning unit 2 kita, dengan unit kedua berkenaan dengan the trends in the global population and also the demographic transition model tadi. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
Thank you, Prof.
So
Thank you.